In Animal Farm, the book, not the politically correct remake, all animals are equal, but some animals are more equal than others. In Trumpland, all people are equal, but some people are more equal than others. And those people's nations are also more equal than all others as well. Ed Guyurain, yet another ex-SEAL who wants to bring back the draft, did not beat Thomas Massie. Israel and Zionists did. Massie was a lone voice in Congress who committed two unpardonable sins. He put America first, not Israel, and he wanted the Epstein files completely exposed and the pedophiles prosecuted. So, if you still doubt that Epstein was a Mossad spy, Massie's defeat should allay any remaining concerns. Trump's MAGA and America first philosophy is long gone. He recently declared he has a 99% popularity rating in Israel. His America rating, by the way, is 35%. Then he said he may run for Israeli prime minister next. Even if this is just a joke, it is a joke in poor taste to all patriotic America first Americans. But Zionists and greater Israelis loved it. Maybe Trump will replace Netanyahu if he is ever convicted in his on-hold corruption trial. It would be fitting since Netanyahu has been running America under Trump anyway. But Massie has echoed me now. The election is over, but the revolution is begun. Crushing the lone congressional voice against Israel first will not diminish Massie, just the opposite. Just as the public execution of Charlie Kirk was meant to psychologically sway us in one way, the opposite is actually the case. Resistance is building, not diminishing. Israel is worried, and so is the deep state. And to crystallize it all, the new bipartisan bill to make Israeli criticism illegal has just been unveiled. The command to not think this or else will in fact cause even more to think thus. The deep state and the greater Israelis think they are building themselves up. In reality, they are burying themselves alongside the dead and defeated. Ex-DEA and DIA retired SOCOM soldier, deep state targeted, turned whistleblower warrior, sabotaged and slandered, betrayed and saved, rejected and redeemed. As teacher and truth teller, now America's intelligence officer, resisting tyranny in obedience to God, welcoming like-minded patriots, training next generations to infill corrupted agencies and St. Martin them, inside out, bottom up, co-opting conquerors in Christ. Welcome. I'm Jeff Prather, and this is the Prather Point. Hey, welcome everybody. Very important show today. And thank you for all the great comments on Tuesday's show. I thought that was great with Commander Jones. Very insightful. Some folks said it was the most important show they had ever seen. But before we get started, remember to go to staybrewed.com, or you can go to teamamericcoffee.com for 20% off and get their great coffee. We have it every day. Here's some night and day. They send it to us every month. If we run out, we can't wait to get it because it is totally the best coffee as well. So staybrewed.com or teamamericcoffee.com for a 20% discount. So the Team America Coffee is one brand. And you can also go to jeffreyprather.com/shop and you get the Prather private label, which is also made by Stay Brewed as well. But anyway, great coffee. Go ahead and make sure you try it out. And also go to beready123.com, beready123.com. Use the code Prather for 10% off anything. You can get your Iridium 9555 phones for free with a 24-month contract, or all kinds of other things like this little man pouch here. Very handy. You could put a Glock 26 or 27 in there. There's a key fob there. There's also a magnetic pouch for your phone, very handy. Place for your credit cards. Works real well in all of those regards. Lots of cool stuffs from little pouches right up to generators at beready123.com. So lots to get into here. The Massie defeat and the Malinowski kill equals Cabal control is the title of today's Prather Point podcast. And we're going to have attorney Bud Cummings on the ATF Bryan Malinowski kill. But first, we're going to talk about not too big to rig. Instead, it was let's make a deal with the Trump reelection, I believe, at this point, because Trump has continued Biden's damage through the country. And Trump continues to look more and more like Biden all the time and say nonsensical things. The Massie defeat proves rigged elections. Massie loss equals a Pedo Joe win. It's very clear to me. So America First died in Kentucky yesterday. Thomas Massie lost his Republican primary 54.5% to 45.5%. The numbers are real. The money was foreign aligned. The story is the end of something while simultaneously being the beginning of something else even crazier. Thomas Massie was the last consistent American First voice in the Republican caucus with a 96% liberty rating. He voted against the Iran war. He helped force the release of the Epstein files. He voted against the U.S. military aid to Israel. And these are the unpardonable sins, as I mentioned in my new intro, which I hope you like. Let me know what you think. 5 days ago, he introduced the AIPAC Act, a bill to require AIPAC lobbyists to register as foreign agents because they are under the Foreign Agents Registration Act. 5 days later, the lobby he tried to register helped end his career. $33 million was spent on this single Kentucky House primary, the most expensive primary in U.S. history. $15.5 million of it came from 3 pro-Israel PACs working to defeat him. United Democracy Project, AIPAC's election arm, RJC Victory Fund, $3.9 million, MAGA Kentucky, $7.5 million, largely funded by Paul Singer, and a PAC linked to Miriam Adelson, who is Israel First over America by her own admission, by the way. These are 3 billionaires, Paul Singer, Miriam Adelson, John Paulson, that named by Massie himself on the Tucker Carlson show as the people behind his defeat. None of them live in Kentucky. All of them are publicly identified as major funders of pro-Israel causes. On Tucker, Massie said at least 95% of the funding behind his opponent came from the Israeli lobby. His words on the record. A sitting Republican president flew to Hebron, Kentucky to campaign against the only consistent America First incumbent left in his own party. That's MAGA, really. Make America Great Again is America First. But that is all gone. Secretary of War Pete Hegseth made a personal appearance for the challenger the day before the vote, which was illegal, by the way, to do. But, Hegseth doesn't seem to care much about illegalities. The president publicly threatened to revoke Lauren Boebert's endorsement when she campaigned with Massie. Marjorie Taylor Greene has already resigned. She got her congressional retirement. She's out. This was not a Kentucky primary. This was a foreign policy referendum bought with foreign-aligned money to remove the only Republican who voted against more war, more bombs, more foreign aid, and more cover-ups. When a lobby pushing a foreign government's policy can spend $15.5 million to defeat a U.S. congressman sitting who tried to require it to register under FARA, the question is no longer whether foreign interests are buying our elections. The question is whether we are still pretending they are not. Republicans do not die in coups. They die in primaries, bought by people who do not live here for the seats of the few who would not bend. And again, to top it off, the bill I just mentioned, the bipartisan Senate bill, just unveiled the tyrannical government in line of sight. The goal is to criminalize criticism of Israel. This is thought crime. $1 billion for Jewish community programs, censor speech critical of Israel, censor students critical of Israel, censor online speech critical of Israel. This is the bill they just introduced. From April 2026, definition of tyrannical government, concentration of unchecked power, suppression of individual rights, Speech, assembly, and the press restricted or banned. Replacement of law with the ruler's will. Match the definition to the bill. Every single criterion on the table. 500 plus churches already targeted in active FARA filings. 2.5 million per week in foreign agent registrations. Their phones tapped. If this passes, free speech in America ends. Trump's administration, just like FISA, supports it. The Senate is pushing it. It is bipartisan. Israel first, America last. They do not work for us. This is what tyranny looks like when it's being built. Lobbying should be illegal. This is where we are at now. And what we are supposed to believe is that a guy who had only 75 donations from Kentucky, an empty victory party, there was nobody there. If you've seen Tucker showed it, there's almost nobody there, and nobody at his rallies. And the guy wants to bring back the draft. He wants to draft your kids or your grandkids. And none of us veterans want a draft army, by the way, as far as I know. Well, I think Joe Kent has actually talked about that. Joe Kent has said it'd be good because then everybody's committed. And that's a worthwhile subject to talk about. But nobody at his rallies managed to double turnout for 2024 to get all 10K mail-in ballots. So this looks exactly like fraud. This looks exactly like the Biden, the Pedo Joe election. So by inference, then, it does not look like the Trump election was too big to rig. It looks like let's make a deal happened there. That's very important to understand because the deep state cheated for Trump against Massie, just like for Biden. I don't like saying this. And of course, where I'm at in the rural Bible Belt America, everybody's still very pro-Trump, pro-Republican. And especially if you've noticed on the show, when I've had older folks on, like I had Dale Comstock on, and I had Dave Grossman on, and they were all, let's bomb Iran, let's kill everybody, let's support Israel. You see that with this older generation, not all, because I think I'm older than both of them, but a lot of them are very stuck in their ways and buying the old Zionist misrepresentation of Scripture. But the Massie lost after a 2026 vote total that more than doubled from the 2024 vote total. This is Biden's election 2.0. Massie increased his turnout by 19% over 2024. Galrain, his opponent, the ex-SEAL, increased the opposition turnout by 357%. Today's turnout doubled 2024's in the highest overall total in Kentucky voting history. And about 10,000 of those were mail-in votes. So this should sound real familiar. And again, the real crime here is Massie dared to say, let's put America first, not Israel. Let's stop spending money to Israel. And also, let's release the Epstein files, which clearly go back to Mossad, which clearly goes back to Israel. And when I'm talking about Israel, I'm talking about the greater Israel Likud party, Netanyahu, that's in control, not all Israelis. There are Israelis who are against Israel, even as a state, as a nation, because to use that term, Israel, which literally means to struggle against God, Israel has always been a religious community that follows the Torah and the Tanakh. And to turn it into a nation state, there is a group of Israelis, Orthodox rabbis, that are totally against that. And so I don't want to exclude them. So I want to be clear about who I'm talking about, because the greater Israelis are secular. And I've gone over in detail in my Substacks, and if you haven't read them, go back and read them, how God already fulfilled all the promises to the Israelites in Joshua, at the very end of Joshua. And then they blew it because they turned away again, which is something they continually do, because we are all fallen, including the Israelis and the Israelites. They're not better than us by any means. If anything, Israel is worse than America, more demonic, more satanic, more incestuous, more pedophile, than America. But that's very important to understand and grasp. So I see so Barron will likely develop Barron shin splints. Heard Maria Green sold her house and moved to Costa Rica with her $10 million she made as a Congress member. I don't know about that, but yeah, she did stay until she got her retirement. And I would like to have seen her stay, but she has her reasons for doing that. Maybe she was threatened as well. But the fact now remains, there are no real opposition votes to Israel first. It's all opposition votes to America first. It's all Israel first now. It's all big government. It's all more FISA, no FARA, and it's. But the resistance will continue to build elsewhere. So I want to hear what you have to say about that. So please reach out and tell me about that. What you think. I'm monitoring comments on X. Oh, and I do have one there. Okay, I see Carly there on X. So let me know what your thoughts are. And also, please go to patreon.com and subscribe. Like I just taught last night in my handgun martial arts class online to folks across the country. And the way you do that is at the Point Patriot level, which is the $25 a month level where you get daily training videos, but you can also get $15 special resource. I've posted several special resource articles, or just the $5 level where you're going to get the created news. You're going to be able to follow along with the details of the show about the sometimes outrageous things that I say as well. But Google Maps has just unburned the Pacific Palisades, and infuriated Angelenos noticed. And this is evidence, I think, or certainly intelligence, that big tech, deep state were in on it. And now, like every covert crime they commit, from Waco to Warp Speed, they want you to forget about it. Otherwise, why cover it up? Why change it? So what Google Maps has done is they have restored the Pacific Palisades. The Google Maps satellite imagery depicting the Los Angeles areas of the Pacific Palisades and Altadena now show pristine neighborhoods untouched by the devastating fires of January 2025. Not too long after the fire, Google updated the satellite imagery to reflect the fire and thousands of lost structures. Now it's back to pre-fire images of houses and businesses that are no longer there. Why? Well, again, this is what got me thrown off Fox News and Laura Ingraham, is when they wanted to exclude the 2 AKs, the murder weapons, from the Bryan Terry murder trial, which were Fast and Furious guns, is why do you exclude the weapon, which is evidence from the trial, unless you're trying to cover something up? Well, then why do you exclude the evidence, the crime scene, from the Google Maps, unless you're trying to cover something up? And if you're trying to cover something up, that means that intimates that you were involved in a crime. And that is arson, and that is serial arson, mass murder arson. Which I have always said about these fires, and we have covered those in detail for a long time. And the best intelligence information analyzed, which possibly could be circumstantial evidence in court, if the FBI and DOJ were willing to actually do anything, would be the fact that Google Maps has changed the Palisades area back to pristine. Why would you do that? Unless you're trying to cover something up. So that is more evidence, just like the Massie loss, that the deep state, the global cabal, as in Kabbalah, is in on it. Also, the CIA were involved in a March 28th killing of Francisco Beltran. He's alleged mid-level Sinaloa cartel member. And what's significant about this? Well, CIA operating in Mexico, that's relatively new. Allegedly, I said that under Trump's previous administration, special forces might have been back in Mexico. My old Group 7 Special Forces was publicly back in Mexico for a training mission. But now they're saying that CIA Special Activities Group used to be Special Activities Division, SAD. Now it's Special Activities Group, SAG, not the movie theater, is working. It's their ground branch. And they planted a device in his car, which killed him. So there's an explosive device that CIA allegedly planted in a cartel member's car. Of course, they've been declared foreign terrorist organizations, but they planted an explosive device in machinery. Just like, and I'm going to have John Bray on shortly talk about the lavalier microphone on Charlie Kirk, which is now looking like the assassination method of Charlie Kirk. And I wanted to point out that similarity there. But I want to get to my guest because that's in the title of the show, which is from the Massie defeat to the Malinowski killing. This shows the cabal is in control. And when I say global cabal, so when I say deep state, I mean the double government. I mean the Praetorians who run the government behind the scenes. Remember, the Praetorians used to decide who got to be Caesar. Eventually, after the Roman Republic fell, there were Caesars, there were tyrants, and then pretty soon the Praetorian Guard, which guarded the Caesars, got to establish who would be the next emperor. They were controlling it. And so I equate the deep state or double government, the puppet masters behind those we think are representing us, as the Praetorian Guard. That's the intelligence community, the CIA, the FBI, which is an intelligence organization with law enforcement functions, as that. And then the global cabal is the international team of deep state or double governments. Cabal as in Kabbalist, primarily Israel. And again, not all Israelis, but greater Israelists, those who want to expand, which of course I have proven in the past scripturally that all those the greater Israeli promises were fulfilled, and that's in Joshua at the end, but they don't want you to see that. But today I want to talk with my special guest. I'm really excited to have him on. I was talking with him earlier because this goes back to my days with the Contras. And you've heard me often talk about how I was in 7th Special Forces Group working with the Contras Order of Battle, and everything we were doing was legal, but then Ollie North was doing an illegal covert operation, and covert operations often go sideways. And the rule with covert operations is, if we are found out, is it worth the effort? And generally speaking, if you're really doing an evaluation, normally the answer is no, it's not worth doing. So we're not going to do it. In law enforcement, they're called SARCs, Special Activity Review Committee. But again, what we were doing in 7th Group at the time was totally legal. We didn't have any problems. I told you how I had to cut my hair after 7 months working back in the tunnel in Panama, put on my Class A's, green beret, sit behind Colonel Fry, and explain to the new Sink South commander how we were not going to end up before Congress like Ollie North had, and we weren't doing anything illegal. But inadvertently, Ollie North built the Clinton cartel of death in Arkansas by allowing Contras, cocaine, and cash to flow through there. And that built the Clinton cartel of death. And that was an inadvertent outcome of the failed covert operation of Iran-Contra. But there are echoes of that now, because as you will hear, Bud Cummings is the attorney for the widower and the estate of Bryan Malinowski, who was the executive director of the Hillary Clinton National Airport in Little Rock. Now, Little Rock Airport is not the MENA airport, but they're only like 120 miles away. That's not far at all. But he was killed by ATF. So we're going to get into all of that because, again, I have lots of ties to that. I was a Fast and Furious whistleblower. I was a DA liaison agent to ATF as well. So, Bud, welcome to the Prather Point. Thanks so much for coming on.
My pleasure. I appreciate you having me on to talk about Bryan Malinowski.
So please give the audience a brief summation of your background and then a brief background of the case. I have it all in front of me, but you're much more expert in it than I.
Well, my background is kind of woven in and out of the private sector and public service. I was I've been a practicing lawyer at times in between these stops, but I was chief legal counsel to Governor Mike Huckabee for a period of time in the 1990s. Uh, I was appointed by President George W. Bush to be the United States Attorney in the Eastern District of Arkansas immediately after 9/11 in 2001.
So that's a big deal. U.S. Attorney, that's a big deal. I've worked with
It was
several U.S. attorneys.
it was a big deal then because for a couple of reasons. President Bush and Attorney General Ashcroft kind of believed differently than a lot of, Washington usually tries to pull all the power to Washington, D.C., but they believed in pushing out a lot of the discretion and the responsibility out to the 93 United States attorneys' offices, which I think is generally, with the right supervision and leadership, a good philosophy. So they put a lot on our plate, and because of 9/11, we were challenged to stand up a domestic counterterrorism program that didn't exist before 9/11. So there was a lot of work to do, and it was an interesting time, and felt like an important time to serve. And since then, I've worked in the private sector, and somehow still have managed to attract controversy from time to time. Most recently, by accidentally becoming involved in the ATF's killing of Bryan Malinowski in Little Rock in 2024.
Okay, well, so you have a lot of chops for this. You got the experience. That's what I wanted to get people to understand. So now let's go into let's walk through the Malinowski, not just the raid and the killing, but the investigation as well, please.
Yeah. Well, Bryan Malinowski, as you said, he was the executive director of the Little Rock National Airport. It's actually officially named the Bill and Hillary Clinton National Airport, much to some people's chagrin, but nevertheless, he was, by all accounts, and I did not know Bryan while he was alive, but by all accounts, I knew of him. I live in Little Rock, and he was the highest paid city employee. He made over $260,000 a year. He'd been the director for a number of years, and he was, by all measurements I'm aware of, very successful and good at what he did. We had one of the less than 10 debt-free airports in the country. And for the size of airport, it's a very nice airport. They just finished a new, put a facelift on it. It's very nice. And that was all Bryan's planning that happened before his death. So he was married for 28 years to his wife, Maria, who goes by Mare. And they had no children. Bryan was a guy, I kind of refer to him as a wonk. He was a lifelong coin collector, and so he knew everything about coins. He read lengthy books about coins. He made a foray into competitive poker at one stage of his life, and became a really accomplished poker player, and entered some competitions. And I'll tell you a quick story about that. At his funeral, I noticed there was a whole bunch of guys there that said they were, his poker guys. And I said, so Bryan played poker with you guys? And they said, well, not exactly. One of them was Bryan's dentist. He said, I invited Bryan. We had this monthly poker game, and he came the first time, and we saw he brought a lot of money, and we were thinking, kind of rubbing our chops, and we're going to pluck this guy like a turkey. And he lost a little bit, but he said by the end of the night, he had won all the money that came to the game that night. And then he came back the next month and he won all the money that came to the game that night. And so I had to take him aside and say, Bryan, you're a great guy, but we're not good enough. You can't play with us anymore. So Bryan came to their game for 5 more years and just sat as the dealer and taught them how to be better poker players. That's the kind of guy he was. He really liked to know a lot. He was a smart guy, and he liked to teach and he liked to talk about things that he was interested in. So that led him to, probably about 5 years ago, his father had a collection of firearms. His father was getting older, didn't hunt anymore, didn't need them. Bryan was from Pennsylvania, and his dad gave him the family firearm collection. And so that sparked kind of an interest in firearms. Being Bryan, he didn't just take them, and he started studying them and learning about them, and he got intrigued by it. And that evolved into him, I don't know how many times a year, maybe 5 times a year, attending regional gun shows, setting up a table.
And there are a lot of collectors like that. They're not really shooters so much as collectors, and that's very
and that's my understanding. Is he had been to the gun range, but he was not a shooter. He was more of a collector, and he was interested in guns, and he'd set up a table at the gun show, and he'd buy, sell, and trade not only guns but coins, because like I said, he's a lifelong collector, and other things. His wife said sometimes he'd just take toys out there and sell them. But what's abundantly clear to me is
how many arrests has he had up to this point in his life?
He had no criminal record, and obviously he couldn't. He worked in a highly regulated field as the director of the airport. His career couldn't bear probably a DUI, much less something more serious. And so this was totally a hobby to him. I can't imagine. We don't know. Bryan's not here. I can't, and his wife didn't know, but she didn't think he really made a lot of money or brought home a lot of money from these gun shows. And he made $260,000 plus a bonus a year at the airport. He probably made, several thousands, maybe $5,000, I don't know, $10,000 a year buying and selling stuff at the gun show. He just liked to go out there. And the other group that was identifiable when I attended his funeral was all his friends from the gun show that he'd sit on a Saturday and a Sunday and talk to all day. And
I know those types. I know those guys. They're debating 9mm versus 45 and all that kind of stuff, and sipping coffee and smoking cigarettes. Yeah,
I'm a gun guy.
Of a criminal at all. He does not fit any.
And I own a lot of guns. I'm certainly no gun expert, but I've been to my share of gun shows. And I tell people, I said, if you've never been to a gun show, you can pretty quickly understand the guys that set up tables at gun shows, particularly if they're not firearm dealers. They are people that love to talk about firearms. And if you go up to one of those tables and ask a question about the 1911 Colt pistol, you better be ready for a 30-minute answer, because that guy's going to tell you more than you ever wanted to know. That's why they go. They like to share their knowledge, and they're enthusiastic about it. And that's who Bryan was.
That's exactly right. Yes.
So now let's turn to the law. The law is probably, a lot of people follow your show or aware. I can sell you. You can come over to my house and I can sell you my granddad's shotgun, and you can hand me $300 and I can hand you the shotgun. And I'm not required to buy a license to do that. I'm not required to do a background check on you. I'm not required to do any paperwork. And Second Amendment advocates in Congress have, zealously carved out that safe harbor, if you will, for hobbyists and people that have personal gun collections, and fought off the gun control folks. The gun control folks call that the gun show loophole, because that allows hobbyists and collectors to go up to a limit and set up a table at a gun show like Bryan and still not purchase a $200 federal firearms license, not conduct a background check, and not fill out I can't remember the name of the form, but the form that you have to fill out when you purchase a gun. Bryan was operating within that safe harbor and obviously believed he was entitled to operate within that safe harbor.
And what is that limit?
Well, that's a great question, because I went to law school I went to college for 7 years, got a law degree. I know a lot of lawyers, and you could have a room full of lawyers to read that regulation. And if you had 100 lawyers in the room, you'd get 100 different interpretations of what the rules are. And it's pretty clear that juries have struggled with this, because I can show you cases where they have prosecuted people that are clearly well beyond where Bryan was in the number of guns they sold, the amount of money that was changing hands. and they were acquitted at trial after being charged for being in violation of this regulation because there's not an objective test in it. It doesn't say you can sell 10 guns, but you can't sell 12. It talks about
the
things.
Law, you're an attorney. I spent 1 year in law school, came to my senses, and left. But under the law, to enforce a law, there needs to be a clear, a clear standard, right? A bright line.
Right. I thought when I look at that, I can't believe that it really has ever survived a constitutional challenge, because there is a void for vagueness doctrine. Supposedly, you can't be held criminally liable for violating a rule that you couldn't really reasonably be expected to understand what the rule was. And that if you look at the rule, and this is called the engaging in the business rule, it's who is engaging in the business of selling firearms. If you are engaging in the business of selling firearms, you have to go buy this $200 federal firearms license, and you have to start filling out a piece of paper when you sell a gun. If you're not, you're a collector and hobbyist, and you're not obligated. That line is totally subjective. It talks about things like, is your primary motivation livelihood and profit? Well, I believe, from talking to a lot of people, and the rule actually changed, and we can talk about that. The Biden administration changed this rule, and the change became official about 6 weeks after they killed Bryan. But after. But they knew it was coming, and a lot of people believe that this big show they put on unnecessarily to serve a search warrant at Bryan's house, and I'll tell you about that, was tied to the understanding that ATF was about to roll out this new rule. President Biden was going to claim that he closed the gun show loophole. It really didn't, but that was to, kind of pander to the gun control people on the left. But Bryan was operating under the old rule. And a lot of people, I think, maybe to too great of an extent, a lot of people at the gun shows relied on that language as your primary motivation to sell this gun, livelihood and profit. So if you had another job making $260,000 a year, for instance, at the airport, and you're only making a couple $100 maybe on a sale of a gun, and you really were out there because you like to talk to people and be at the gun show, or maybe you like to have the guns because you wanted to attract more people to come trade coins with you, and that was your real interest, you might think, well, no, my primary motivation is I'm a hobbyist, and this is part of my hobby. Where Bryan may have, if you read the affidavit to the search warrant that they executed, where he may have been pushing the limit is he had started, we know, ATF anyway, claimed that over about a 3 or 4 year period, he bought about 150 guns legally. And so they obviously suspected that started to be a high volume of guns. And I know a lot of people have bought 100 guns in the last 3 or 4 years. That's not that unique in Arkansas, but he had apparently purchased about 150 guns over 3 or 4 years. And he had, and they had documented, they'd gone up to his table and seen that he was selling a few guns at a time in their original packaging. So that's clearly something the ATF doesn't want you doing, buying a gun and taking it, turning it right around and reselling it. To them, that makes you look like a retail dealer, but that's not the entire test. But that's probably what the part that had them thinking that he was in violation. What
you're saying there is a legitimate interest there for ATF to look at when they see.
I think absolutely. I think there's absolutely a legitimate interest for them to be concerned that he was in violation of the regulation. Now, later on, we learned that they had let their imaginations run wild and thought they were maybe pursuing a lot of things that they had zero proof of. For just an example, they were, one of them said in an Arkansas State Police interview, well, we knew he was the airport director, so we wondered if he was transshipping guns to cartels.
Okay. So, let's not go there yet, because I want to. So that goes back to my day of Iran-Contra at the Mina airport. but let's not go there yet. But that's really
and another one said we had learned. Somebody said that he had competed at poker, so we wondered money laundering. I mean, because a guy had competed in a poker tournament, you thought you had a basis that he might be a money launderer. To me, as a former prosecutor, that is a huge leap.
Well, casinos are great for money laundering, but not private poker games.
Well, even if you're at the casino competing, I mean, they had really let their imaginations run wild, but they did have a basis to be concerned that he might have. And there's nothing that we're going to talk about here today. I'm not here to debate whether he was in violation of the regulation. I can almost certainly tell you by looking at other cases, had they charged him with it and he'd gone to a jury trial, he'd almost certainly won based on the outcome of other cases. But reasonable minds might have disagreed about whether.
You're talking about the precedents, how cases have been decided in the past. So there's criminal law and civil law, and then there's precedents, how cases have been decided. And you're saying that the majority of the precedents would have been on his side if he had gone to trial.
I don't believe that any jury would have looked at his conduct and said he was in violation of this rule. But I do believe that there was reasonable, there was probable cause to believe he might have been in violation of the rule. And that's not really what the controversy is about. I mean, that we're not here to say.
Just as an aside, so how I got targeted by DEA was through my outside employment, which I had a company called Warrior School where I was training, deploying military and intelligence personnel. And so I would buy, 10, 20 AR semi-autos and Berettas, 92s, and Glock 19s for the classes. And so I attracted some ATF attention. Actually, I did not, but my senior instructors did. But, once we explained, hey, here's the contracts, here's what we're doing, then that was the end of it. So, and all that was, just to put this in context, was two plainclothes ATF special agents coming to the door of my senior instructor and saying, hey, we see that you've bought a lot of weapons in a short period. What's up? And them saying, we're a business. Here's our government contracts. Here's our DUNS number and everything. Hey, can we see the weapons? Can we come in and see the weapons? No, you can't come in, but we'll bring the weapons to the door and show them to you that way. And then that was the end of it right there. That was it.
Well, ATF, and I've worked with ATF and known a lot of ATF agents that I like and admire. I mean, people usually don't sign up to be agents in any of these agencies for, because they're bad guys and they want to do bad things. I think ATF has been given a mission that is so politically charged. I mean, there's no way this investigation would have happened or this search would have happened this way under a Republican administration. Republicans direct ATF's resources in an entirely different direction towards violent crime and felons in possession of firearms. Democrat, and I'm not trying to be partisan here. I think this is just political fact. Democrat.
No, you're making reference to like the FBI with long guns raiding Stone.
Yes,
which was totally inappropriate as well. I can tell you, having done hundreds of raids, maybe thousands, and hundreds, maybe thousands of knock and talks as well. But anyway, let's go into now
these suspicions ripen into a full-blown investigation. And this is where I think things start going off the rails. They had some legitimate suspicions, but in many cases that I can document where they suspect somebody's coming to the gun show and exceeding this limit that they're concerned about, they've sent a cease and desist letter to the guy and said from ATF, cease and desist. We think if you either go get a $200 license or stop coming to the gun shows, or you're going to face prosecution. And I'm sure had they done that with Bryan, everyone that I didn't know him, but everyone that did know him said he would have immediately shut down the gun show operation because he loved his career at the airport so much, and he would have never done anything to even come close to knowingly jeopardizing that career at the airport.
So right there is where this veers off from standard procedure. SOP is no
common procedure. In many other instances, that's what would have happened next. But instead, they they started an investigation as if this was a terrorist bombing plot. They started following him at night in their cars. They put a tracker on his car. And then they ultimately went and got a federal search warrant to search his home. Now, had they wanted to pursue this as a criminal investigation and continue to push it, that too was not completely out of line, because if you read this definition of who is engaged in the business, it relies a lot on profit. If you're not making any money, it's hard for them to say you're a gun dealer. And they had no idea. They only documented in the search warrant affidavit, they're going to say everything they know, because they want to put all the proof in there they can for the judge to see, to justify. They only documented that they knew that he'd ever sold 10 guns. And 3 of them he'd sold to ATF undercover agents that walked up to him at the gun show.
Oh, he sold. Oh, I did not see that when I read. He sold how many guns to an undercover agent?
They sent 2 agents at him. One of them bought 1 gun and one of them bought 2 guns.
At the same time?
Oh, I don't know if it was the same moment, but it might have been the same gun show. It might have been a different. I don't know. But they had documented that they had bought 3 guns from him, which proved nothing, because everybody knew he was at the gun show as an unlicensed seller in front of God and everybody. I mean, here's another thing. I've been around criminal justice for 40 years. Criminals don't tend to commit crimes and not try to conceal their conduct. He was renting a table at the gun show out in front of everybody. This is where 100% of his activity was taking place. And so he wasn't conducting himself as someone who probably would have thought or knew that they were trying to break the law. But
a better scenario would that have been is for the UC to go, hey, let's go back to your truck and give me 5 ARs, or give me a full auto, give me a modified AR that goes to full auto or something.
Yeah. There's no part of this story where he was selling bump stocks or extended magazines or Glock switches or anything like that. These are all legal, really standard run-of-the-mill, not very exotic pistols and AR-15 type rifles. So they get the search warrant. Now, this is where things really go off the rail, because this is a man with no criminal record. He's been married for 28 years. He lives in one of the nicest, newest suburbs in Little Rock, Arkansas. Very quiet neighborhood. 0 crime in the neighborhood. He keeps extremely regular hours, goes to work. He's kind of a night owl, tends to stay up late, goes to work, at 9:30 in the morning, parks in the same parking spot every day, works in a gun-free zone. So they decide to show up at 6 in the morning with agents and task force officers dressed in tactical gear, not a trained SWAT team.
Let's back up for a second, because I think you skipped something crucial. Well, 2 things I want to bring up. Excuse me for interrupting you. But I read over the material, and I want to give you an agent's point of view. Is the first is that remark you made about one of the task force officers saying, well, because of the airport, we thought he might be running guns. That's an immediate connection in their minds to Mina and Iran-Contra. And so they're putting this guy in that category. Clearly, whether it's in the reports or not, he admitted it, which means these guys are talking about it. Hey, maybe
they didn't document any. As you know, former law enforcement, before you conduct an operation like this, you need to do a threat assessment and have a safety meeting and determine what factors are out there. Does this person have a known propensity for violence? Do they have a criminal background? Do they have are they a risk of flight or escape? Is there a risk of destruction of evidence? In drug cases, these things go down really fast because the courts have let them, because you can flush drugs down the toilet. But here, they're looking for firearms and they're looking for computers and telephones, none of which, to my knowledge, you can flush down a toilet. So,
but also, they were going to execute the search warrant before, but he was not home.
Right. So they had their meeting. They did not document one, what we call an exigent circumstance that would have raised the threat level, and maybe justified the tactics that they used. They assembled at the nearby Walmart parking lot at 5 a.m. and were ready to go to his house at 6 o'clock in the morning. They had a guy on the house all night watching the house. And that guy reported that Bryan had uncharacteristically left his house at about 5:30 in the morning because he had to catch the early flight to Washington, D.C. for a meeting. So he was gone, and they wanted him at the house. Now, it was a search warrant. It was not an arrest warrant. It was a search warrant for his house and his car, but he'd taken his car and gone to the airport. They could have managed that, obviously, but he was gone. So they shut down the whole operation, came back an entire week later, slightly different personnel, did not repeat the preparation meeting, met again at the Walmart, got in 10 carloads of ATF agents, ATF local, Arkansas local law enforcement that were serving on ATF task force, and Little Rock Police Department, who had been asked to support them by controlling the perimeter and probably put a couple of uniformed people in the back of the property and things like that. At 6 o'clock, they rolled up to the house, and they went, I don't remember, 4 or 5 agents dressed in helmets, full Kevlar, rifles, goggles, approached the front door. One of them taped over the lens of the Ring camera, so whoever was in the house couldn't look at the Ring camera and see who was at the front door. And this is probably a good time to stop and talk about what the law requires here. This was not a no-knock warrant. No-knock warrants are really frowned upon and very rarely issued. This was a standard knock and announce warrant. It could be executed anytime between the hours, I think, of 6 in the morning and 10 at night. And so they came at 6 in the morning. The law requires that they knock and announce themselves as law enforcement and give the occupant of the house a reasonable opportunity to understand who's at the door, what their purpose is, and to voluntarily admit them into the dwelling to conduct their search under the authority of the warrant. That's what the law says. Now, the cases are all over the place. It's not very clear how long is reasonable. The cases say, well, it depends. It's 15 seconds if you're worried that they're going to flush drugs down the toilet, but that's not the case here. It changes with the size, the hour of the day. Cases talk about that, and the size of the dwelling. It doesn't take very long to answer the door at a motel room. It takes a long time if you're in a 5,000 square foot house. Bryan's house was somewhere, it was 2,800 square foot, but they knew. I mean, the master bedroom was in the back of the house. They had double wood doors, and then exterior insulated glass double doors on their front door. So their purpose. So
let me interject here from a special agent and DA snow cop special operator point of view, which is similar to a SWAT team. And I've also had special forces training in this. There's 2 types of entry. There's dynamic, and dynamic is when you got to get in there fast to rescue a hostage, rescue an undercover informant, or keep them from flushing the drugs down the toilet. And then there is deliberate. This is a search warrant, and this is clearly deliberate. There is nothing requisite here about a dynamic entry. Nothing. But it's clear that that's what they think they're entitled to do, because what they do is it's all pretty meaningless, but they bump the police siren on one of the Little Rock police cars 30, 40 yards away out on the curb. It could be anything. That could be
it was almost in the driveway of the neighbor, and they never heard it. You know, it was a 1-second bump, and they flashed the lights out there. Then they started banging on the exterior storm door, while simultaneously and by the way, let me stop again. We don't know. We don't have a perfect view of what happened. Little Rock Police Department has a long-standing policy of mandatory use of body-worn cameras when executing search warrants. Little Rock Police inexplicably did not have their body cameras on.
Well, that may be because typically with DEA, if we had we didn't have body cameras back in my day, but we had undercover cameras and TVs and stuff. And when the raid happens, we like to turn those off because people have said things.
But since 2022, President Biden issued an executive order that required all federal law enforcement to mandatorily. This was after the how can I forget this? The lady in Kentucky that was killed in a search. As part of the Black Lives Matter movement, marches in her name. I'll think of her name in a minute. After her death, they issued an executive order that mandated body-worn cameras on federal law enforcement in certain situations, including the execution of search warrant. That was 2 years before this happened. ATF didn't have on any either. So nobody has a body camera. The only recording we have is when they bumped that siren at the curb, it kicked on a recorder on one of the patrolmen. So we have a bad audio, and you can hear but you can, at least it helps us set up a timeline. We can hear when they started to knock, and we can hear when they started to break the doors down. The time between their first knock, which is not heard by Bryan or his wife, they're in bed. They're banging and shouting on the exterior insulated glass. They didn't ring the doorbell. They're banging on an exterior insulated glass door. From the time they started knocking to the time they started breaking down the glass, took a pry bar and popped the glass doors and then rammed the wooden door in, 28 seconds. At 6 a.m, an hour before sunup, in 32-degree weather, total darkness, they gave them
sun's 28 not up yet?
Seconds. No, sun's it's an hour before sunup. No, it's not even first light yet.
That's a chilling effect under the law. It's supposed to be doing when it's still dark. That's considered a chilling effect, isn't it?
I can't answer. I don't know. I don't know how the law looks at that. The warrant authorizes them to execute at any time between 6 a.m. and 10 a.m.
Well,
that's what the form says.
The normal reason for that is there is light, because when you execute in darkness, you only do that if there's real danger, like you're going against some cartel members or something, because that tends to have a chilling effect on the population. Is what I learned. So they have a stack. They have a stack of agents. You know what a stack is. Yeah, you might want to explain it. You probably can explain it better than I can, but they have a stack of agents, of probably 5 agents dressed in tactical gear. They bang on the doors for really less than 28 seconds, because we know that the leader said he thought they'd been out there a long time, and so he ordered them to break the door down, and the guy that was supposed to have the tool to pop the glass door had laid it down in the grass, and he had to go walk over and get it and come back. So probably at around the 20-second mark, they gave up on knocking and announcing and ordered a dynamic entry into the home. Now, as you probably know from your experience, even though we've already gone way down the path of unreasonableness here, they could have still saved themselves, because in some situations, law enforcement is known to go ahead and knock the doors open, but then they do a call out. They stand outside the threshold and call into the house. Yep.
ATF, we've got a warrant. That would have saved Bryan Malinowski's life, but they didn't do that. They didn't make any more announcements. Once Bryan and his wife heard the crashing of the door coming in, probably heard the exterior doors being popped open, Bryan had time to get up, grab a firearm, grab a magazine and load it, exit his bedroom. He had 4 or 5 steps to a corner where he could turn and see about 30, 40 feet away at a 90-degree angle, the front door entryway of their house. And he got there just in time to see the doors blow open and a figure step into his house that was a silhouette who was obviously armed.
Let me stop you there for a second, is that he had to go retrieve, his weapon was in condition 3. Magazine separate, source of ammo, magazine separate from pistol, which shows that he is a good follower of the essential 4 firearms rules. Bad guys don't follow condition 3 rules.
Well, and he had no small children. I mean, I used to do that.
He could have been in condition 1.
My kids have grown and gone away. My gun's loaded. It's ready to roll. But
his conduct all through all these years, right up till the middle of the raid, shows his intentions as a citizen.
He's a rule follower. I mean, he's in the airport business. This is the most regulated business in the world. He's a rule follower. He knows the rules, and but he thinks he's protecting his wife. I can only speculate what was going through his mind at that moment, but he saw an armed figure step into his house. His wife, he told her to stay in the bedroom, but she's stubborn, and she was right behind him, and I'm sure he wanted to protect her. And so he took, I think, 4 shots at the feet of the intruder. The first agent dove into out of his line of sight, and the second agent stepped in and returned fire, hit Bryan in the forehead, and mortally wounded him. He technically lived for a couple more days, but he was, for all practical purposes, dead when he hit the floor. His wife was close enough to him that she got shrapnel wounds, probably from skull fragments, and then she was forcibly grabbed up and drug out of the home within seconds. She only had on, kind of a
nightgown.
What women wear. It wasn't even a nightgown. It was underwear and a little T-shirt. They drug her out into 32-degree weather in the dark, put her in a police car, and made her stay there for at least 3 hours while they hauled her husband off to the hospital. They were telling her he was fine, and she'd seen him laying there with his half his skull removed.
We used to just sit family members on the curb, sit on your hands on the curb and don't move, and put one guy watching them.
They wouldn't let her go to the restroom. They just made her stay in this car. At some point after she pleaded with them to go to the restroom for over an hour, they had a female officer drive her to the local fire station and parade in front of all the firemen, and the officer went in the bathroom with her and watched her go to the restroom. And they kept her in custody until Arkansas State Police arrived to investigate the shooting and took her statement. Didn't let her go to the hospital.
In my day, we never did that. We'd put family members on the curb, sit on their hands. I've even put gangbangers who weren't involved in the bust on the curb, sitting on their hands, just peacefully like that.
Yeah.
No need.
Well, and once you, my understanding is that law enforcement is allowed to control everybody at the presence of a search, but once you have the scene in control, they're not required to stay. They can leave. She was required to stay in a car, clearly in detention, and the requirement was that she give a statement before she leave. They wouldn't let her go to the neighbor's house. She asked them, could I just go to the neighbor's house and get some clothes? Of course, she was not speaking that. She was very
that's
upset,
you're forcing that's a violation of Miranda right there. If you're forcing her, well, you're the lawyer.
Custodial interrogation.
Yeah, that's not going to fly.
Yeah. So that's the basic story. I mean, the main points are, this was again, the political part of it is it's weaponization because the party in power was juiced up about gun control, and they were unleashing ATF on these type of cases. I think it's a very low level regulatory violation. It would have hurt Bryan Malinowski to be convicted because he probably would have cost him his job, but this isn't jail time. This isn't prison time for violating this regulation, at least at the level he might have been in violation. It would be probation. If I was the U.S. attorney and ATF drugged more than about one of these a year, and I'd tell them, pound sand, we've got more important things to do here. I mean, this is like a duck hunting violation.
Again, I don't, like you said, I don't think, now that I've heard the whole thing, and I've sat at the front table with assistant United States attorneys and on occasion U.S. attorneys on some big cases. And again, the thing would have been, hey, if you had gotten a letter to register as a dealer, would you have registered? And I'm sure he was yes sir. So that would be the end of it. So, or
he would have stopped going to gun shows. He had two choices, or he would have hired a lawyer and argued with them. But so the ATF chose for no reason. There's not one justification for all the choices they made, particularly to come out at 6 a.m. with 10 carloads of agents. Not a SWAT team. Not a SWAT team.
Well, let's look at some things now, because Pam, off your question is, was there another reason outside of the gun hobby that the feds went after Bryan? Malinowski was replaced as executive director of the airport. That's one place I want to go. And you've already helped that by saying, in the minds of at least one of the task force officers, which means they all talked about it. I guarantee you they were talking about this. I guarantee you that when they're talking about this and having their coffee, they're talking about MENA, and they're talking about Iran-Contra, and they're thinking maybe we've got another Iran-Contra here. Now, let's talk about first. This is not a SWAT team, as you pointed out. These guys do not train together. They got tactical gear, but it's an ad hoc task force thrown together at the last minute. The guy's very amateurish. He's got the Halligan tool laying on the ground. The guy throws the ballistic shield in the doorway. That's not how you do any of this. That's one thing.
The guy that's supposed to, I think this is an important point for you. The guy that's supposed to go in first is supposed to have the bulletproof shield that says police across the front.
Yes.
He, for some reason, has laid it on the ground while they're breaking the doors open. So the number 2 guy stands there and doesn't know what to do, because he knows he's number 2, but number 1's just standing there and doesn't pick up his shield. So number 2 decides to go in first without the shield. I mean, that's how amateur hour this entire, and I want to say this before we forget. I've had multiple people who have real SWAT team experience at FBI, in a state police SWAT team. A SWAT team is a group of identified individuals who are assigned to that team. Now, they may have other duties, but they train together as a team. They go to regional competitions as a team. They don't make mistakes about who's going in the door first, or where the tool is, or whether the guy that made the call to break the door down in 20 seconds said he thought they'd been out there a couple of minutes. I mean, they don't make mistakes like that.
No, that's a
bunch of untrained agents dressed as SWAT team playing SWAT team.
Well, and so that's what Waco was too, by the way. But time dilation is one of the physiological phenomena that happens when you're approaching a zero-sum conflict. There's a whole bunch of them. There's auditory exclusion. You don't hear your own gun go off. There's tachypsychia, fast mind, where everything looks slower. But time dilation is part of tachypsychia. That's what that guy's describing. But the point here I want to make is, as a DEA special agent liaison to ATF, been out on ATF raids, had a desk at Tucson ATF. Fast and Furious starts at an ATF group in DEA Phoenix, by the way, is that ATF has a history of doing this. This starts at Ruby Ridge, where they kill, the ATF agent kills the son, shoots him in the back. Then the FBI sniper, Lon Horiuchu, who I actually knew, changes the rules of engagement and kills the wife holding the baby. Then to fix that, this is just after Princess Gate, where the SAS are black clad and they do the successful rescue of the hostages at the Iranian embassy in Princess Gate. They get all their gear. They don't write an op plan. They go to Waco. They could have arrested David, whatever his name was. Koresh. Down any time. The sheriff knew him. He went into town every day, but they wanted the big raid. Problem was, enemy had a vote. They shot back. It's been shown they found the doors finally that they fired first. It's been shown the FBI started to fire. I was actually at firearms school. Then Oklahoma comes because militia is rising up, and so Oklahoma is a big government setup. I've had on the show here. I've had Margaret Rhodes, who wrote the book about blowback. Turns out that the entire Oklahoma City thing was all government agents, including German intelligence, on loan to CIA. So the intimation here is while they were amateurs, clearly, and there's a lot of more amateur hours, and ATF keeps on doing this, by now, personal negligence that has been institutionalized in ATF should be a big enough deal that there should have been, as a firearms guy, if I was an ATF firearms guy, I'm not, I was a DEA primary firearms instructor, that this, and these are gun guys, is that this should have been handled by now, because all this has already happened. They have this history of doing this. That's one. Number two, I think, as Pamoff is saying here, there was somebody else, FBI, CIA, somebody who put a bug in ATF's ear about Malinowski.
Well, because there are theories about that, and I'm not prepared to tell you that I know that any of them. Just like in context, a lawsuit's been filed against ATF over this. This event happened on March 19, 2024. Federal lawsuits are not fast, and in this case, and to some extent, rightfully so, federal law enforcement officers have immense baskets of defenses and immunities that aren't available to other people when they go out and somebody's injured, because we don't want everybody that gets knocked over the head by an FBI agent during an arrest to get to sue the FBI agent. So we protect, and as we should. But they have raised all those defenses and immunities, in my opinion, are not designed to protect this conduct. But they're hiding behind them, and they've bogged it down in court. There's dispositive motions to dismiss pending that have been pending since last summer. And until a judge rules on those, we haven't even been allowed to start doing our investigation or deposing anyone. But that being said, we do know that our mayor and some of the members of the airport board had been wanting to give this job to somebody else. We had a relatively new mayor who's been pretty actively given toys to his cronies, and that there were issues like, the parking contract, that the airport made $12 million a year off parking, and there was pressure from the mayor's office to put that out to a contract and let one of their political friends have it. So there is a theory that Bryan Malinowski was seen as an obstacle to the mayor's plans, and that maybe somebody connected to the mayor tipped off ATF that, hoping that they could get him arrested and he'd have to resign. That is a theory that's commonly thrown out. I can't begin to tell you that there's any credence to any of that, but it would explain a little bit of why maybe so many resources, so much energy was put behind what's, to me, a fairly pedestrian case of suspicion, and something that could have been handled with a letter.
Well, briefly, my sad story is I went from hero to zero and was fired with 19 years on the job, never being charged, never being convicted, not even having a bad evaluation, because my high-level informant, I was extraditing Miguel Caro Quintero, brother of Rafael, who tortured and murdered our agent Kiki Camarena. It's a very famous case. Was going to sue the administrator of DEA. And so she thought, Michelle Leonard thought, and I found this out later when I got disclosure, of all the transcripts, that she was being briefed on me. I think she thought I sicked my informant on her to sue for the $5 million State Department reward. And then it later turned out in the Niebla Zambada federal trial that indeed DEA did have a deal with the Sinaloa cartel to run drugs north in exchange for the Fast and Furious guns going south. That's on federal record. You can go look it up right now. Niebla Zambada trial. So what I think happened here, what looks very, and the Iran-Contra connection is only 200 miles away, not if that at all. And you've reinforced that by saying that one of the task force officers was talking about it, which means all the task force officers were talking about it, is somebody got wind or inferred that Malinowski somehow might be aware of something going on. And I will tell you, and you probably don't know this, but I have first-person reliable sources that there is still unknown flights going into MENA at night and activity at those same areas that were before. And
it's a big airport, it's a big runway for a little town. I'll tell you that.
It was, of course, running. That's where Barry Seal, who had been special forces, was running Contra's cash and cocaine for the CIA. That's where the two kids end up dead on the railroad tracks. That's built in the Clinton cartel of death. And of course, with the recent effort of trying to supply guns to the Kurds, which is just another variant of the Fast and Furious Benghazi, Syria, Libya, Afghanistan, Ukraine story. It's all really the same thing. I'm not. I have no intelligence information about that. But what I'm saying is, I wasn't even aware that I was a whistleblower initially. But the powers that be got scared at what they thought I was doing. It was actually my informant doing it. And I think the same thing may have happened here, because there's no other reason all of a sudden for the ATF agents to take this 360 turn or 180 turn and pursue this the way they did.
Well, I can throw out one other thing, circumstance that could explain it, but you're right. Their conduct here is not really understandable without more facts. But the Biden administration was about to change this rule, and they did change it. It had been in a comment period. It was a matter of public record that in about 6 weeks, they were going to introduce a new rule with changing the language. That language I told you about, primary motivation, livelihood of profit. They changed that. I think they mainly took the word primary out. They, were you motivated by profit? Is that one of your motivations? But it doesn't have to be primary.
But the precedent that would, but the Malinowski case would not have applied.
No, but I think there's a possibility.
Right?
No, they couldn't have prosecuted him under the new rule. But what is possible, and I know from working at Department of Justice, if the president is going to speak out on some law enforcement initiative, everybody knows about it in the department long before that. And they'll send out emails and say, hey, the president's going to address this new gun show issue on April 22nd. Anybody that's got some good cases to highlight as part of the press rollout, let us know. And I think probably they'd been tipped off about Bryan Malinowski. They knew he was an executive with a fairly high profile, and they thought, hey, somebody in Little Rock may have thought this will get me promoted out of here. I'll get to be in a bigger office with a better job, and I'm going to give them a really high profile perp walk. I don't suspect, and I'm not going to sit here and tell you anybody. It looks like they wanted to murder Bryan Malinowski. I don't think that was anybody's intention. I think they wanted to make a big splash. They wanted to impress their bosses. But the notion, but here's the other thing. And I think you'll agree with your experience. This is a huge failure of leadership. That, I don't care what some street agent wants to do. They like kicking in doors. They like pretending they're Navy SEALs. They don't like doing paperwork. These guys that become ATF agents didn't do it. 90% of their job is to do a bunch of paperwork they don't like to do. They love going out in the field and kicking in doors. I get that. That's fine. But there's got to be a grown-up in the room when these decisions are made. And there's no evidence that any sane person was involved in any of the planning or execution of this. All of it was so unnecessary. They could have walked up to his door at noon and they knew it and knocked on the door and handed him the warrant, and everybody would be alive today.
Everything you're saying could have been said for Waco as well, where 80 women and children were burned to death.
And you think they'd have learned by now that these kind of things that need a grown-up in the room. But the other thing that I want to point out, this is over 2 years ago. The anniversary was in March, 2-year anniversary. Since the day Bryan Malinowski, Congressman Jim Jordan chaired the House Judiciary Committee, convened a hearing in May of 2024 about this. And members of the Republican Party and the Democrat Party lambasted the ATF director who refused to answer any questions. Nobody seemed to understand how this could have possibly happened. And they said, we demand answers. Well, it's been 2 years. ATF has never once tried to explain what happened, tried to justify what happened, said they investigated it, said that they fired somebody, said that they demoted somebody, said that they changed their training. They are just hoping that they have told DOJ, and I know this is for a fact from several sources, they've told DOJ two things. Bryan Malinowski was a significant gun trafficker and that he knew that they were law enforcement when he took a shot at him. And those two assertions are ludicrous. They're insulting and they're lies. And and they've hid behind those two lies. Somebody needs to hold, and that's why I think I shared with you the 30 state senators in Arkansas recently wrote a letter to the president and said, hey, we haven't forgotten about this, and we still don't have any answers, and we're real concerned about how in the world a federal law enforcement agency thought it was okay to kick a guy's door in at 6 a.m. over this type of investigation and kill him in front of his wife. Nobody's ever explained that to us. And so I made a commitment to Mr. Malinowski, and we're going to stick with it.
Well, that's great. You're actually, and you should, and this is a tragedy, but you're actually reinforcing my point of view, which is after Waco, there was a big investigation. We saw how they were trying to build their image back up after Ruby Ridge. So they bought black tactical gear, thinking that makes them SAS troopers, which doesn't. It's the training that makes them that. And there was a Delta advisor there who said they made the op plan afterward. There was a lot of reveal of that. Eventually, even we saw the FLIR, forward-looking infrared radar, where we see the FBI firing first. We even see the FBI setting fires. None of that has happened here. So again, I was also a dual credentialed Defense Intelligence Agency intelligence officer while I was a credentialed DEA special agent. So I had a DOD top secret clearance and a DOJ top secret clearance. This looks like somebody from an intelligence community thought that he maybe liaisoned with somebody from MENA, or there was something that made them think, just like your one task force officers was saying, which means if one guy was saying it, they were all thinking it, that this is a gun running operation, and we don't want this, and we want to squash this, or we want to, like you said, have the publicity for it as well. That makes sense too. But either way, I think somebody put this in their ear, and I think that's from a FBI, CIA organization, and you're not going to hear that because the guy's going to be at the back of the courtroom. He's going to go back and show his creds to the judge, and then they're going to bury it. I've seen that happen many times, unfortunately, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. But I can tell you, as one of the state senators said to me recently, he said, look, if what they did to Bryan Malinowski was legal, then somebody needs to change the damn law. And I think this case is well known in Arkansas. It hasn't gone away. I've been involved, as I said, in way too many matters of public controversy. Little Rock's a fairly small community. They know me. They know what the jobs I've done and the things I've done. I've never had so many people. It's 2 years. People will, if I go to the grocery store this afternoon, you come along with me, some 70-year-old woman is going to come up and tap on my shoulder and ask me, whatever happened to that poor Mr. Malinowski? Did they ever explain why that happened? People are still scratching their heads here. How, it's inexplicable. It was so outrageous. And typically we get a read back. When something like this happens, the authorities come back and dissect it and say, well, this is what happened, and this is why it had to happen, and this is why it was okay, or this is why it wasn't okay. Nothing. Crickets. Silence.
Well, Mena to Little Rock is 257 miles, and the airspeed for a small aircraft like a Cessna 182 is 120 to 180 miles per hour. So you can see how close that is. And I can tell you from firsthand intelligence information, that as recently as a month ago, there were still night flights coming in there. So the intelligence information analysis projection that I am giving you fits the fact-based evidence of the case. It's just a projection, though, of course, but my suggestion would be to depose that task force officer who made the comparison with Iran-Contra, and then see, and who else did you talk about like that? Because that is putting in their minds a whole nother scenario that did not exist. Anyway, that's for what that's worth in a cup of coffee.
Well, we may find that out, that there is that connection. We may find something else out. Everything in the system has worked to delay and suppress the information in this case. And I'm hoping that anybody that's listening to this will contact their congressman, tell them they're concerned about it, tell them they want answers, and continue to push and tell the government, because it's not particular to Little Rock. If ATF can do this to a guy in Little Rock, they can do it in Sheboygan, they can do it in Las Vegas, they can do it in Key Biscayne. I mean, they can do it anywhere they want if they can get away with it. And I don't want to live in a world where somebody kicked my door in with me having no even knowledge that anybody might be suspecting that I was violating the law, and not making a proper legal announcement and let me know that they're law enforcement. I respect law enforcement. I've been pro law enforcement my whole life. This is bad for law enforcement. This makes it more dangerous for law enforcement. I've had a lot of people in law enforcement tell me this. This kind of incident is bad for law enforcement and for the safety of law enforcement officers.
No, very true. So, well, thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you for having me.
Your best wishes and for you to pursue this, and prayers for the Malinowski family and the widow. I've published several of your documents on my Patreon and locals, so people can look at this, the affidavit and everything that we've talked about. Any place else where you would like people to follow you or go to?
No, I don't. I should have my social media information, but I don't have it in front of me. But I have not been active on Twitter, but we've been talking about maybe starting to push some information out on Twitter. I think it's at Bud Cummings AR for Arkansas, BUDCUMMINS AR. So they might want to follow that, and we'll try to push out some information. And if we do, if somebody reposts it, that'd be greatly appreciated.
Yeah, you might get some anonymous LE coming forward there if you put out something else like that can help. That's very big.
DOJ has a supervisory responsibility here that they've advocated. They need to go figure out what happened in their own agency. And
DOJ and FBI ain't going to do anything except cover stuff up anymore. And I'm somebody who graduated from the FBI Academy in 1990 and friends with my old friend Ed Morales, here at the Miami gunfight FBI agent. But, DOJ and FBI today are just the cover agency for stuff like this.
Yeah. That's for another show, but I've got a lot of strong feelings about that. The DOJ has certainly been damaged over the last 15 years, and somebody needs to fix it.
Well, thanks so much for coming on, and stay with it, and we will check back with you when you make some more progress.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, God bless.
God bless.
Okay, well, I thought that was real important to go over, and I wanted to show my tie-ins there and Pam off. I think something is going on. Oh, Bala Customs, good show. Yeah, I think it is very important to follow up on that, because, again, I think there is a intelligence operation behind that somehow that went on. Not necessarily that he was doing anything, but just like with me, they thought he was doing something. And so they went to arrest him or detain him or just intimidate him. Exactly what happened with Charlie Kirk, exactly what has happened with Massie in the same way. I think there's a pattern here, and I hope it is clear. But please go ahead and like, share, and subscribe to my Rumble. Also, like, share, and subscribe to my new YouTube channel, which is JP Intel USA as well. And if you want, sign up for my patreon.com/Jeffrey Prather at the $5, $15, or $25 level. That keeps the show free after all these years. Or you can go to locals as well and sign up at JP Jeffrey Prather at locals.com, $9 a month or $90 a year. All that is very helpful. Oh, Pamela, great information and a good interview. Thank you. We've got more good ones coming. And if you have suggestions for that, love to hear them. So remember, October 7th was a setup for a stand down. Even America turned traitor Israeli spy Jonathan Pollard admits it. If you believe Israel is special, you are not a Christian. Israel is small, not special, and certainly not sacred. Israel offers abortion on demand and is totally dependent on U.S. aid. We don't need Israel. Israel needs America. Israel is not the Jewish state. It's just a state. There are Israeli, American, British, and every other country Jews. Judaism is a religion. Zionism is a political movement. They are not the same thing. Per Jesus, Jews are not God's special people. Read the New Testament. Those who follow him are. The church is the new Israel. When they killed the son, they lost the vineyard. Israeli anti-Semitism is a lie. Almost all Israelis are Ashkenazi, not from the Middle East, but Arabs, Palestinians, and Coptic Christians are. Gaza is genocide. The USS Liberty was war. Assassinating Iranian diplomats was treachery. Israeli Knesset members is forbidden to have U.S. citizenship. American Congress are infested with Israeli dual citizenship. In 2023, an IDF sniper killed 2 Christian women inside the parish. An Israeli tank demolished Mother Teresa's convent for the disabled. Charlie Kirk abandoned the Israeli cause just 48 hours before his murder. You cannot serve 2 masters. Choose.